Ed. How you doing, mate?
Living the dream, Robbie. How you doing? Is the sun up yet in Cronulla?
No, absolutely not. It's garbage bin day, and I can hear the garbo out the front there picking up the bins at like 5:30 in the morning. So not quite ready for my day yet, but I've had a good morning so far. I've been up for about 90 minutes and had a cup of coffee, a piece of toast, and ready to get into today and talk to people about the unspoken truth. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here at the show, welcome. It's great to have you here. Ed and I are talking about things in the mainstream media. We're going to pull the curtain back and give you a glimpse in behind what's going on behind the narrative. I don't know about you, but every now and then I find myself being drawn in by the deep state, and they're trying to perpetuate some narrative in my mind. And for some reason, I'm so open and gullible to those things. But if I just stop myself and ask, what's the unspoken truth behind that? I find that there's actually something else going on there. What about you, Ed?
Yeah, well, I've always kind of suspected that of you, Rob. That you're a pretty naive guy at heart. You pretty much buy whatever.
I feel like, why am I so susceptible to these bloody people?
No, well, look, that's why this show will help keep you on the straight and narrow. This will help clear out the cobwebs for you.
It's going to keep me grounded, isn't it? Well,
That's
let's
right.
have a look and see what's on today's show, folks. We've got a series of things. Did you know that the US is almost out of money? If you haven't seen the US debt clock before, and that's not something that you've really been interested in, this will be quite a fascinating subject for you as well. I can hear gold and silver in the background. It's like some sort of treasure or something happening there. So we're going to talk about that as well. We're going to talk about countries and how much gold they've got and what a difference that actually makes, etc. We're also going to talk about the market today. All sorts of crashes been happening. Ed's going to share a little bit about that. You might have heard also in the news that Epstein's diary came out, and there was all sorts of naughty people meeting with that rat bag. And, that just poses more questions than it raises answers. The biggest question for me personally is, why on earth is any of this not being published in the mainstream media? And why is the mainstream media completely silent on this issue? Sounds to me like they might be even a little bit, dare I say it, complicit. But let's investigate that topic and see if we can find the unspoken truth behind that. And it's going to round out the show with a really tight and light subject about child predators being protected in the state that he lives in. He's pretty passionate about this. So looking forward to getting a little bit of insight there and getting some feedback from him as well, because they're changing the laws and things are very, very different to what they once were for someone like that growing up in conservative United States. And I'm certain that the same things will be true here in Australia over a period of time as well, because we share the same cultural differences. I want to kick off today, folks, by asking you to come on over and follow us on Spotify. We are here on YouTube every day, of course, and we're live on Spotify every day as well. As soon as this show is finished recording, I pull the files out and I upload them into Spotify. So if you can't tune in to the YouTube channel for whatever reason, you got your headphones in during the day, head on over to The Unspoken Truth. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever podcasts are found. And don't forget, you can follow along on Twitter. If you want to get some more unspoken truth that can't be shared on this platform, you can find some more on Telegram and also on Rumble, because we're a bit limited in what we can and can't say over here on YouTube. And we want to make sure that you're getting the whole story and the real unspoken truth behind the stories that we're talking about. So come on over and join us in the Telegram channel. Ed, have you got any opening remarks you want to share, mate?
No, really, just please smash that like button if you don't mind, guys. It really does help the algo.
Absolutely, it does. And don't forget to ring the bell there as well, so you get an alert every time we put out a new video. I'll try and get them out before midday Sydney time each day. If you're in the US, that means it's in the future. You're getting the news from the future. Imagine if you could look forward. I'd rather, look a bit further forward in the future and see what the lottery numbers were. What do you reckon?
I do it all the time.
And you're projecting your consciousness into the future.
Right. Look, anybody who's followed my market, commentary and path, they probably, think that I am
some sort of savant, are you? Is that what it is?
I'm trying to think. Is it a soothsayer or what's a gypsy? I don't know. I have a pretty good record at forecasting a lot of that stuff. But
yeah, you are pretty good at that market stuff, that's for sure. There's no question about that. Folks, I want to kick off by sharing my screen here and helping you. I'm going to share the whole entire screen, not just the window. Before I do that, let me just get organized here with Ed and I and our layouts. Let me pull that out of the stream and I'll share my screen. I'll share the entire screen so you can see everything that's going on. And the first thing I want to share with you is the US national debt clock. So Janet Yellen came out, I think it was today, your time in the States, and said that the US is going to run out of money by the 1st of June if they don't raise the national debt ceiling. So if you don't know, folks, the national debt ceiling has been raised in the United States more than 100 times since World War II. So the US national debt ceiling, those words are actually a bit of an oxymoron because the ceiling denotes that it's not going to go any higher. That's as high as it's actually going to go. So I find that a bit of a funny statement there. It doesn't really make any sense. If you've never seen this before, this is the running total of US national debt. And if you can't wrap your brain around the numbers there, let me help you. So the first number here where my mouse is 31 trillion, 721 billion, 103 million, 730, 40, 50, $60,000. That's how much debt the US actually has. So what does that actually mean? And why is the country running out of money? Well, what you can do is just look over here to the right-hand side where my mouse is here, where it says total debt to GDP ratio. So if you don't know, folks, GDP is gross domestic product. So how much debt does a country have versus how much money does it bring in? So if a country had, say, $10 billion worth of debt, but they had revenues of $50 billion, what you do is you take 10 divided by 50 and you times it by 100, and that's what you get as the debt to GDP ratio. Now, the IMF say that debt to GDP ratio should be below 60%. So there's no real hard and fast number because there's more numbers in the economy that make up an economy than just debt to GDP. But if you're below 60%, it seems like you're going to be less impacted by an economic shock if that happens. And so that's why they say that. If you're around 40% debt to GDP ratio, it says that you're in a really, really strong position. Your country is able to weather the storms. So these numbers here on the right-hand side are the really interesting numbers to look at. Not so much the total amount. Well, that's important, of course, but the debt to GDP ratio matters. So it means that there's 133.98, so 134%, call it, more debt than there is actual money coming in. So the spending to GDP ratio, so only 37% of government spending is spent on government services. The other 73% of it, or 63% of it rather, is spent on servicing this debt. So that is a really scary proposition because it means the country is running out of money. It's like you're using a credit card to pay off another credit card, and there's literally nothing that you can do. Eventually your credit card limit is going to, so if you've got a credit card over here for $10,000, you've got one over here for $20,000, eventually you're going to reach $20,000 and you've got to keep paying this thing off. But the amount of interest that you're paying on credit card number one is higher, and the amount of money that you've got going on this credit card will reduce significantly because the interest payments will cover off what you've got there on the serviceability. So you're taking from Peter to pay Paul, and it's really not something that's very sustainable. When you look at if you click into here, they've got state debt clocks and world debt clocks. I'll just show you into the world debt clocks for a second. So China is by far the worst, followed by China and Japan. Interestingly, Japan's economy's been in the doldrums since the late 1980s, early 1990s for a variety of different reasons, but mostly because of demographics and their aging population. We all know that Japanese have a really long life expectancy. They live into their 90s, for heaven's sake, and there's just not enough people replacing their population to bring in the tax revenue to solve that problem. All countries in the world have that. And there's a big debate here in Australia at the moment about having a large Australia. And in the next 2 years, they were talking about importing 715,000 new immigrants here to Australia. And that's a real big problem here because we don't have the infrastructure to support that. We don't have the housing, we don't have the schools, the hospitals, and all of the transport facilities to support massive growth like that. And the problem that we face is if we don't import those people and we don't bring that skilled labor here to Australia, our debt to GDP ratio goes down and our economy will start to come undone because there's just not enough people here. But the problem that the government has is there's not enough people here and there's not enough services to cover off the people that they want to bring here. because we can solve the problem of not enough people. We just open up the gates and let more in, which is not necessarily a bad thing in a big place like Australia, and it creates more opportunity and whatnot, but it has like a lot of negative effects in our economy that don't seem to be covered off on or well understood by politicians. So if we look at the Australian population and what's going on here, I think this number is pretty telling as well, how big your population is versus the debt to GDP ratio. So whether that's public debt or external debt, so this is the aggregation of everything in a country here. So if you look at the United States, this external one is pretty bad as well, which means the companies and business in the United States is in debt to other countries around the world, not just internally. So this is a really interesting chart, but this one here is a pretty scary number, right? How long is this going to go on before the whole world implodes? If you don't know, folks, no fiat currency in history has ever survived. Ever, never, ever. None, zero, nada. None of them has survived, and this one is no different. This is not going to survive either. We just happen to be living through a time where the economy is coming to an end. So there's another one here, the Australian debt clock as well, just gives you some slightly different numbers and some different aggregations of what's happening. And it's funny when you collapse the actual, so I collapse it there and I expand here for more information about credit. Down the bottom of it here, if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can't see it, just shows the numbers of zeros and it says thousands, millions, billions, trillions, because it's pretty hard to actually recognize those numbers. And how many zeros is that? So 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 zeros. What the hell? This number, this chart down the bottom here really kind of shows a story here. A lot of people have said that the world's economy is coming to an end in the 2020s, but the reality is the world's economy came to an end here in September 2007 during the GFC. When the GFC happened between 2007 and 2009, you can see this as this chart here is kind of going up and down and ranging a little bit. Then all of a sudden it spikes up here. So that's where government debt really took off. And most financial charts you look at really tell the same story. It doesn't matter what the chart is. What matters is the time frame in that 2007 to 2009 time frame. We see this massive hockey stick of money printing and growth. And the world's economy has really been on life support since. And until that had happened, everything was sort of under control and manageable. But then we had this giant shock because of the Glass-Steagall Act and the way that the GFC actually came to be. There was a giant shock in the economy that caused all of these things. Now, why does any of that matter, and how does any of this US national debt impact you? So this is a big news story where the US Congress are continuously arguing about should they be raising the debt ceiling or no, and they came out just the other day and said they came to a resolution which was going to reduce government spending, which would reduce the debt, and which would allow them to raise the debt clock or raise the debt ceiling rather, and it would fix the problems that are going to arise. But you would know that from time to time, periodically throughout the year, the government gets shut down because they're arguing with each other so much about this. But the reality is, if they don't raise the debt ceiling, the whole country will implode and collapse. Now, the reason that this matters to you folks is because of inflation, because the way that the country monetizes the debt that it actually has is by printing more money. And the only thing, folks, that causes inflation is when there's more money in the economy. It's got nothing to do with the war in Europe with Vladimir Putin or oil prices. Nothing at all. It's got to do with more money in the economy. And any politician or reserve bankster that says to you, oh, that's because of the war in Ukraine or something else, is just completely incorrect. That shows that they don't understand how basic economics works. And this is a great chart, and I'll put all of these links down in the description below in the show notes today, folks, so you can have a look for yourself. I was running a little bit late to the show today because I was looking at these charts, which is pretty interesting. So Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and Sudan are the basket cases of the world, 1, 2, and 3. So Zimbabwe has inflation of 284%. So this data is pretty current. So you can see debt to GDP ratio worldwide, 66.4%. And I was mentioning before that the IMF said that anything below 60% is pretty good. So we see the world average is actually a little bit higher than what the recommendation is. And the global average for inflation is 13.9%. But don't believe what your government tells you, folks, because the basket of goodies that they use and they measure to measure inflation is something that they manipulate. So they're manipulating what goes in that basket of goodies. And I promise you that I go to the local Woolworths up the road here in Cronulla, buy 2 bags of groceries that are only like not even full each bag, maybe half full each, and it cost me $50 or $60. nothing has been more expensive than cost of living here in Australia. And the government just brushes it aside, says that it's got to do with petrol prices, or rather oil prices from the war in Ukraine. But if you look at the price of oil today, it's less than what it was when the war started nearly 18 months ago, for heaven's sake. So why is inflation still biting us so hard? Why is supply chains biting us so hard? And the reality is it's a delayed response from all the money printing that's happened, particularly here in Australia because of COVID. They printed so much money here in Australia that's caused this massive inflation, and the government just scrambles around trying to figure out some other excuse not related to them. And the reality is that the government didn't print the money. The Reserve Bank of Australia printed the money, but the government set the conditions to actually make that happen. And the people at the Reserve Bank are so incompetent and so scared that they've got no choice but to do it. And the Reserve Bank governor here in Australia was thrown under the bus like it was all of his fault. And the politicians just went, that's not my fault. We didn't do that. That was that guy over there. He's gone anyway. And we've changed all of the rules so that can never happen again. So I think once again, the government has absolved themselves of responsibility. 6.5% inflation here in Australia. What a load of absolute garbage. That is absolute complete garbage. And on a day-to-day scenario, I promise you, if I go out there with my microphone and my camera and I go and ask 20 people up the road here in the mall this morning, how are you finding cost of living prices, petrol prices, groceries, all of those things? They'll tell you that it's far more than 6%. So think about it. If I bought $100 worth of stuff and then all of a sudden it was $106 worth of stuff, do you think I would notice that $6? Probably not. I probably wouldn't even think twice about it, right? But if I buy 2 bags of groceries and it costs me $50 or $60, do I notice it? Yeah, because I can shop that around to cheaper supermarkets or go to cheaper stores and buy 4 bags of groceries for the same amount. That's how I know personally I've felt that inflation. And if you look at debt to GDP here in the chart, as I mouse over the great land down under here, 36.1%. So the government here seems to have it under control. But these places over here, Venezuela, 210%. Over here in Sudan, Turkey, what a joke. That's a basket case as well. 73.13% inflation. Imagine that. Imagine if something costs 3/4 more every month, month on month. So today it costs you $100, then 1 month's time, it'll cost you $173. And then another month's time, another 73% on top of that. Inflation in Turkey is running out of control completely. And you just don't hear about that in mainstream media because it's a story they don't want you to know about it. And the unspoken truth is that idiot that's in charge there, that dictator that's in charge there, who owns all of the military contracting companies, is completely and totally responsible for it. But he's part of NATO, and he's part of the alliance. And Turkey is this geographical place that is absolutely necessary in the world, particularly now because it's on the Black Sea, and they're the ones that control the ins and outs of the Black Sea. And the country is a complete and total basket case run by a foolish dictator. And nobody will say it, but the unspoken truth is that's actually what's going on. So if you have a little bit more of a looky-loo here on this side again, and once again, I'll put the link down in the show notes so you can have a check as well. It's pretty cool because on the right-hand side, there's 193 countries that you can look for. So if I click here into the United States, it pops open a little chart, shows you inflation is 8% in the US. Yeah, right. It's probably more like 28%. And the debt to GDP is 129% versus, what are we saying over here, 133%. So the numbers per the debt clock, because that's in real time, are slightly less as well. So if you look at this, I think this here, I read somewhere on this website, it was from the end of 2022. And if you look at where are we now in the 5th month of the year, so 5 months later, we're at 133% debt to GDP, and here it's 129%. So just in 5 months, it's gone up. What's that? 4%. So that is like a huge, huge problem. So this is a really useful site. There's a couple of other things. If you scroll right to the bottom, there's a couple of other charts that they've got, and I just got 2 more to show you quickly, and I'll round this out. So debt to GDP, again, showing you Japan has the highest debt to GDP, which means that their country doesn't produce enough income to cover off the debts that they've got. And that's why in America, they have to raise the debt ceiling, right? So as I look down here, which are the basket case countries of the world? Well, Greece, of course, and the austerity that they've had to go through. But you can see here the debt to GDP problems of all things, Italy in there. Remember the pigs was Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Those countries in the Eurozone came undone, and they had to go through really severe austerity measures to cover off this debt to GDP ratio because there wasn't enough income coming in from their country, from their tax revenues, to cover off the debts that they actually had. So this is a really interesting concept to wrap your brain around because it's something that's spoken about in mainstream media often. And I really think that if you have a clearer understanding of what these terms mean and how they actually come together, it will help you to get a bit more of a picture of what's going on in the world. And really, that's the unspoken truth behind these things. Why are they hiding the debt to GDP ratio in your country? Why are they burying inflation? Why did they change the definition of a recession in the United States? Remember that? And all of a sudden that's just disappeared. So the technically 2 negative quarters in a row signaled a recession that happened in the United States, and they went, no, it's not a recession. We're not in a recession. All they did was change the definition. What the hell? It's like the leftists that rule our society, the left side of politics ruling our society, are systematically eliminating historical precedent. And they're telling you what you can and can't read. They're telling you what you can and can't see. And they're changing history. And in that case, I'm giving you the example, they're changing the definition of something because historically the definition of a referendum, or sorry, the definition of a recession rather, we need a referendum about that. The definition of a recession is the 2 negative quarters of growth that happened, and they changed the definition and they're changing history. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. And it helps to understand what these things are all about. All right, last chart I got for you here in this little segment is about gold reserves. So who has the most gold in the world? United States, 8,133 tons. It doesn't sound like a lot, does it? For a whole country to have all of that gold, it sure doesn't sound like a lot. But when we look at what's going on here in the world, and we're seeing massive, massive gold buys, but we don't know who's buying it. And it's suspected in the last 12 months that China is buying a lot of it. Same with Brazil and also with Russia as well. If I just want to show you something here in the inflation chart, if I just come back to that for a second, and if I look for Russia in here and we look at all the sanctions that have gone on in the last year in Russia, what's happened to their economy? Inflation's at 13%, for heaven's sake. So they're number 35 in the world. But look at this. Their debt to GDP ratio is 18.2%. So that says to me that their economy is alive and well and doing pretty well. So if that's at the end of last year, we've got a delay of 4 or 5 months because we're 4 or 5 months into this year. That's still a pretty good result. So have the sanctions actually worked that we put onto them? I don't know. What I do know here is that if they don't raise the debt ceiling, there's going to be a hell to pay. But they've passed legislation, and the Republicans that own the Congress seem to have done a pretty good job of negotiating a deal to sort all of that out, to reduce the government spending, to raise the debt ceiling, and to keep this Ponzi scheme going a little while longer. What do you think, Ed? That was a lot to take in, but it's an interesting subject. And that's why I was kind of late, not because I was trying to figure out what to say on the show today, but because I was drawn into these numbers and I was looking at all the different possibilities and the things that were going on there.
Well, this is a complicated topic, so there are all sorts of rabbit holes to go down, and every one of those rabbit holes are there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to cover. So yeah, I'm not surprised that when you start delving into it. I mean, if you want to do a good job disseminating information, you got to put in the time. That's why I hope people appreciate that. Even though our shows tend to be an hour long, let's face it, it is on the long side. But that's because we want to do justice to any one subject that we cover. But even though our segments are longer than your average YouTube video, that's just a fraction of the research that we put into every one of these. So talking about value added, I hope everyone appreciates that. I mean, I'm not preaching or anything, but this is why our channel is going to explode, because two reasons. First of all, we are giving people the untold truth. We are cutting through the nonsense that's fed to them by the mainstream media, if it's covered by them at all. And we're giving people the truth. So I hope that if you haven't subscribed to our channel, I hope you do, just for that reason. Rob and I are not going to sugarcoat anything. We're going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're going to try to give you both sides. We're going to try to be objective. But our focus is on telling people the truth. And in most cases, it's the untold truth. So well done, Rob. Let's make one thing kind of clear. When Rob said that we are running out of money, our government has never had any money anyway. Remember, right?
This is true.
Every nickel that the government gets comes from the taxpayer's pocket. So the government has never had any money. They don't produce anything. They don't generate anything. They're just leeches. They're parasites. They just take. They take and take and take. And most people just willfully go along with, most people are busy leading their lives, so every month when they get the paycheck, a certain amount is taken out for taxes, and for them, they just accept it. Okay, well, that's life, that's what I have to do. There's no way around it. Well, there are ways around it legally, by the way. If you want to, we can have that discussion, another day. But important topics. The world is in what we're living through right now financially is we are witnessing the effects of what's called the modern monetary theory, and this is right. This is what's cooked up by those eggheads in the elitist circles, and basically it says, no problem, we'll just print more money. The solution to everything is to print more money. What's the big deal? We'll just print more. That is the essence of modern monetary theory. We are in the West. We're debt-based societies. All right, so we live on debt. Now, when the debt is mismanaged, we end up in the position that we're in right now. Let's be clear that the debt levels that we have in the West, they are unsustainable. They cannot be sustained. There is going to be a day of comeuppance. It's just a matter of when. And when that day comes, it's going to be fast and it's going to be brutal. It's going to make the crash of 1929 look like a walk in the park. It's going to be brutal. So you have to start preparing for that. And as Rob and I have pointed out many times, is you don't have to be a victim when that happens. If you're prepared, it could be a life-changing opportunity for you. Yep. So stay tuned to this channel because we're going to, help you navigate these treacherous waters that are coming up. Anyway, I kind of went on too long there.
No, you definitely did go on too long. You talk a lot, and it's hard to get a word in here on this show. But that's the unspoken truth, that the truth takes a little while to get out, and you've got to get that out. You say that there's going to be a day of reckoning, but I also think that we've managed to, well, not we, as you correctly point out, the eggheads in charge have kept the economy on life support by simply printing money since 2008. The economy, the fiat currency died in 2008. Everything that we've had since then has just been fake. It's not real. None of it's real. They're like Instagram models. None of it's real. It's all completely fake. But what I think will happen, here's my prediction, and I'm trying to be the forecaster here, and I'll go out on a limb, I'll unzip my fly and put it on the chopping block, and we'll see if it actually comes to pass.
No, there's an
everything
image.
everything that happened pre-COVID, everything that happened pre-COVID about COVID was planned. So the whole thing we know was an entire psyop. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wrote a book called The Real Dr. Fauci, where he unpicks every single aspect of it and proves that all of the exercises that they did in the lead up to a SARS-type outbreak were there. And guess what happened shortly after that exercise? A SARS-type outbreak happened. And so the whole thing was concocted. And if you look closely at the powers that be, the WEF and all of those idiots, the James Bond villains, those people are saying that the next big thing is a cyber attack in our economy. And I think because we're at the end of the fiat system here, they recognize that that's actually happening. And instead of letting it implode naturally and letting the whole thing literally implode, what they'll do is they'll take control of it. And the way they take control of it is with that cyber attack. I saw a report yesterday. There's, before I was looking at the inflation charts and all of those things that I was doing before this, and there's 195 countries in the world and 193 countries at the UN. So Palestine is not a recognized country, and the Vatican City is not a recognized country. So there's 193 countries in the world, and 121 of those countries have a central bank digital currency underway. So my view is that there's going to be a massive cyber attack. And once all 193 countries have their CBDC squared away, they'll destroy the economy as we know it. We'll move to that credit system, and you'll see that in the next 12 to 18 months if we don't all die in a nuclear holocaust.
Well, I agree with all of that, and I'll add to it that that transition, it's not like it's not going to be an easy transition. Oh, we'll just replace it with, and all of a sudden you're going to wake up and easy breezy. All right, so instead of using your dollars, you'll use these stupid CBDCs.
Credits.
It won't be that simple. It's going to be a very, very painful process, and a lot of people are going to be wiped out during this process. But as far as these certain government bodies that we probably shouldn't be mentioning, might get censored. We've talked about them before, ad nauseum on the channel. But there's a famous line: by 2030, you will own nothing and you will like it. So as far as they're concerned, it fits their agenda to the T. But for the rest of us, it's going to be a nightmare. And being prepared would be that much more important. So these topics, we mentioned CBDCs, and we mentioned de-dollarization, and we mentioned inflation, and every one of those topics are critically important all by themselves. But when the net result to you is that preparation is everything, you have to be prepared for these events. And if you don't do anything, you will be a victim when these things happen. We can't predict the exact day that's going to happen. We can't predict the extent to which the damage is going to be caused. But I'm very confident in predicting that it is going to happen, and it is going to be painful. I think those are very easy predictions. The question is, are you aware of it, and are you preparing for it?
They are great questions right there, my friend. And that is the unspoken truth of all of this as well. Are you ready? Are you prepared? And the easiest way to be prepared, Ed has created the mantra here for the Unspoken Truth channel. You got to reduce your exposure to the bank, get your money out of the bank, get yourself some gold and silver, and create some streams of passive recurring income. That's the fastest and easiest way to actually do it. Yeah, well, that mantra is stuck in my head. When I'm out in my morning walk and I'm meditating as I'm walking, I've got some beads, and I'm like, I'm kind of doing a rosary bead. Passive income, gold, silver.
Yeah, very good. I love it.
All right, my friend, let's shift gears. You got some information about the markets today, so take it away. What do you got for us, mate?
Yeah, well, okay, so this topic is pretty much in the same bailiwick there. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the market today. Now, the reason why, I came up with the topic, when I submitted the two topics I wanted to talk about, I came up with it today because it's happening today. The markets are puking today. But that's a technical term on Wall Street. The market is puking. And so we're going to talk about, so what's going on today? What's different today from yesterday? And there are some things to talk about. All right. So so if you recall, yesterday, the big news out of the market was that First Republic Bank was going under. Okay. And that was a very big deal. And JP Morgan was taking it over in a sweetheart deal. And on that news yesterday, JP Morgan was actually up quite a bit. All right. So the market took it as good news. It wasn't good news, but that's the way they chose to take it. Now, you always judge the health of a stock by the quality of the bounces and sell-offs. And this is another little trading tricks lesson I'm going to give you, and an investing trick. All right, so let's say you have, let's say you're a trader and you're looking for a good trade, and you find a stock that had just moved up dramatically. I don't care which time frame it is, whether it's a daily chart or whether it's 5-minute chart, but it just had a strong move up. Okay, that's your first clue that you might be interested in this trade. But the real question is, what's the quality of the sell-off after that rally? Because if a stock has a big rally, but then gives it all back, that tells you that rally was not real. That tells you that was a sugar high. That tells you that wasn't a meaningful pop in the stock. It was a fake out. Okay, but if that same stock has a big move up and then just sells off a little bit, okay, that's the clue that this rally is for real. Because after the stock just had a big run, a lot of people had just made a lot of profits. So they had every excuse in the world to take their profits. But when they don't, when you have just a little bit of a sell-off, that tells you there's actual sincere interest in that stock going forward. So when you're looking for stocks to trade to the upside, you look for a stock that just had a big run up, had a shallow pullback, and then goes into a long channel. By the way, what I just described to you is what's referred to by my students as the Anderson pattern. I didn't create it, but I put my name to it, and among my students, they know what it is. And again, the characteristics of an Anderson pattern is a stock that has a sharp move up, a shallow pullback, and then a long, narrow, tight channel. I won't tell you how to trade it here because I charge money for that. And I don't, but the point is, you want to judge the health of a stock or a commodity or a crypto, anything you're trading, including the markets in general, by the quality of their pullbacks. So let's take I'm going to do a screen share here. I hope that I do this correctly. I'm not really fluent yet on this stuff. So, nope, I clicked the number. I got to put my glasses on. So, all right. Rob, keep an eye on me. Make sure I'm doing this right. All right, so this is an article out of, so this is Zero Hedge, and there's several articles out today. And I was looking for a headline. Are there specific headlines that are acting as a catalyst to this market sell-off today? And yeah, this market pretty much sums it up. SHIT just hit the fan across markets, regional banks crashing. And the general takeaway from this article is the big culprit behind today's sell-off are the banks. Big surprise to everyone, I'm sure, given the way we've been covering the financial system. But look at what's been happening to the banks today. So all these people all these talking heads who have been scouring every piece of social media and every media platform they can get on, telling you how wonderful and strong the financial system is. Well, apparently the street as a whole is not buying it. Now remember, Wall Street, they're all about making money. It's about making money. And they look through the garbage. They open up the hood, they look under the covers, however you want to put it. But Wall Street is voting with their money. And this is what's happening. The banks are selling off. So let me do another screen share here. I guess I gotta get out of this one and back into.
As you're looking at that, Ed, as you're bringing up that chart, is that what you would know as a bit of contagion going on there?
Oh,
so there was
yeah, that's the word. Yeah, very good. All right. So let's take a look at some time. I'm just going to use this site because it's simple and people can easily spot the patterns and stuff. All right, so let's take a look at the 1 month chart to see so we can get a nice close look. All right, so you can see this is what happened yesterday. Now this is my clue yesterday to go short. I did short something. I don't like to give specific things because I don't want people coming back to me saying, "Oh, I did it and it didn't make money." So I don't give specific. I tell people exactly what I'm doing. But this is what I was looking for. The clue I was looking for was this is the previous. So this is last Friday, right? This is yesterday. The market had a big run up and then closed at the low of the day, gave it all back. That tells me that move was not reliable. What did I just tell you? You judge the quality of a rally by the quality of the sell-off. The market the previous day had a big run and went up to that previous resistance right there, right? And it did manage to push through in the morning, but by the end of the day, it gave it all back. That gave me a high degree of confidence that today the market was going to be down. And look at this. So the market's been closed now as I'm recording this for 15 minutes. So the market is down 360 points on the day, and it was a long stick. So let's take let's pull back a little bit, get a bigger picture of the implications of this. All right, now this is the 3 month chart. Now, you see the market did have a nice little rally here for reasons we won't get into here, but it was a stupid rally. I knew it wasn't going to last. I was waiting for it to sell. So if you're looking to short, this is your stop right here. See this? I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this
Yep.
little peak here. Okay, and then if you draw an imaginary line across here, so that 34,000 level, that would be your stop. So if you were going to short, you would use that $34,000 number as your stop, because if it does turn around, take that off, it could run higher. But with the nature of the sell-off, this tells me, okay, that's a pretty dramatic hit. Now, let's take a little further look back at the market and talk about why this is important. Now, this is the 1-year chart. Now, let's say that you put the money into your standard blue chip equity fund a year ago. All right. The market is essentially right where it was a year ago. All right. Down a little bit. So if you put your money in, you didn't bother looking at it because you're busy with your life. But then today you check, you say, oh, well, my account is down, 1% year over year. Well, yeah, but at some point it was down. During that year, it had big swings. So this past year has been a trader's paradise. Now, traders, they can make money in both directions, right? Whether the market goes up or down. All they want to do is they want to make sure they're on the right side of the market. And they have plenty of opportunities here to play both sides of the market. There are big swings there. This is what traders love. That's why this is a trader's market. And that's why this is not an investor's market, because the investor who put money in, a year ago, he's down probably 1 or 2%, whereas the traders along the way, they've been having a field day. Now, here's the important numbers that you really want to draw, you want to write down and keep an eye on. These are the big picture numbers. Take a look at the 2-year chart. Okay, so you can see here where the peaks are. The market rally, pull back, rally. And if you draw a line right along these peaks here, you got 1, 2, 3 peaks there, and now kind of 4. So really around that 34,000-ish level. For the market to have its next serious move to the upside, it's going to need to clear minimum that $34,000 number. Right now we're at 33,680, right? So it's going to need to clear that at the minimum. But even after it clears that, it still has overhead resistance at around 35,200 there and 37,000. So there's no easy money to be made on the upside in this market. On the downside, okay, the next major support is right under this V here. That's the next nearest major support level, which is quite a bit of ways. Actually, it's around 31,008, I think, 31,009. If you take that out, the next support is down here at 29,000. But where the real damage will be, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the real big picture. All right. So if the market eventually takes out this level, the next major support is down here at 18,000. Okay. So, and if you see below from this V here down to this V, there's a lot of error there. There's a lot of room for the market to sell off. Now, these things are not going to happen. Let me get out of this guy. Okay, so those are big picture numbers that you want to kind of write down, right? Those are things you want to live by day, because if the market were to sell off, it's not going to sell off. It's not going to get there in a day. It's not going to get to those numbers in a week or about. It's going to take time to get there. What you want to do is you want to get a sense of the direction of the market, the overall sense of the market. Right now, I don't see any particular compelling reason to be in this market long or short for a while now. I would patiently wait for one of those two numbers. Pick your downside level, pick your upside level, and then wait for one of those levels to be taken out. But this is a weird market in here, and if you're not in the market, don't feel like you're missing out on anything. We're going to have time for things to clarify. And when we get a strong buy signal or a strong sell signal, I'm sure Rob and I will be ringing the bell for you. So keep an eye on the channel. But this is a trader's market. This is a very headline-driven market, and it kind of brings into focus, stark relief, the lesson that I gave yesterday about how when you're trading and when you're investing, you're not trading in the markets, you're trading people. And there are three emotions that drive the market: fear, complacency, and greed. And of those three emotions, the most powerful emotion is greed. Fear. Fear is the more dominant emotion. Because when people want out, they just want the heck out at any price. That's why statistically, stocks go down 4 times faster than they go up. a little interesting little tidbit. So that's the message of the day. A little headline news on the market. What do you think, Rob? What's your opinion about what's going on here?
I want to know a little bit more about that banking potential for contagion there, because we saw the bailout with JP Morgan. We saw the FDIC step in. There's a lot of reporting around that. And as you correctly point out, there's a bit of a sugar high going on there. But in reality, people are really unsettled about that. And there's been quite a big sell-off in the banking sector there. Do you think that potentially could lead to another bank being drawn in with that contagion? As you say, we were talking yesterday about how they all own each other's debt. And then if the price of one is crashing and a support level is taken out, and they push through that support level and everybody's stop is taken out and the sell-off continues from there, when the stops are taken out at those support levels, and then that triggers people to flip the way that their trade is, and they're short on those trades as the price kind of goes down and falls off a cliff. That's a potential for some contagion there. If that's happening at one bank and in one sector of the market, that could be something that escalates pretty quickly.
Oh yeah. This kind of thing unravels very quickly. It could take quite a while for a particular level on the market or a stock or an industry to be taken out. But when it's taken out, then the sell-off happens fast, or the rally happens fast. So there's always that tipping point. You want to identify that tipping point ahead of time. A good trader and good investor, they identify their buy or sell trigger ahead of time. And then they just wait for that trigger to be hit. Now, at some point, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If the market starts taking out important levels, not just little old Ed Anderson in Minnesota is watching that level. The big guys, the algorithms are watching those levels too. Remember, these days, a lot of big moves are not done by actual human beings. It's done by computers. The computers know that when a certain level is taken out, then this is what's going to happen, and the computers kick in. That's why things happen so fast these days in both directions, is the computers are involved. So yeah, back to your question. I mean, I could show you chart after chart of the bank stocks right now, and you can pretty much overlay them on top of each other, and they'll look the same. It's groupthink going on here, and so as far as contagion goes, the question is now, if some random little out of the way bank goes under, it may or may not have an effect on the market. But if you get a big name, like a Wells Fargo or heaven forbid a JP Morgan, then all bets are off. It's Katie by the door. So not all stocks are created equally. They have different effects on the market depending on the prestige of the company. And we've seen now, First Republic Bank was not a small bank. That was the second largest bank failure in U.S. history. All right, so that wasn't a small deal. And yes, and you say, well, Ed, they didn't fail. J.P. Morgan took them over. They're still around. It failed. Okay, it failed. It wouldn't.
They failed. Let's call a spade and say the unspoken truth. It's the quiet part out loud, right? That's actually what it is. For a long time, years and years ago, I haven't done it for a very long time, but I would be set up in my trading account. I use a thing in Australia here called CMC Markets, and trading on CFDs, or contracts for difference. You guys don't have that in the States. You're not allowed to have that, but you're not trading the underlying actual asset. You're trading the contract for difference in the asset, right? So essentially, you're doing it, but you're doing it with leverage, but you never own the paper asset, is essentially what it is, right? And because of where we're located geographically here in Australia, our market follows the American market, of course. So you guys close, then New Zealand wakes up, we wake up, and then Asia wakes up, and then we go around. So Australia is really well placed for a trader, and it works incredibly well. And I would watch the news in the morning. I remember at the time I had a job. I was in between businesses, and my life came undone with a divorce, and stuff was not going so well for me, but I was still trading. And one of the things that I used to do was I would look at all the fundamentals in the morning, like first thing in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would look, because I had an early start, and I would just look. I just kind of glance at it, read the news a little bit, not pay too much attention. And when New Zealand woke up, I would have a look and see if the New Zealand market was following the Australian or the US market. And if I was getting some confirmations in those sectors, I would look at the sectors that were going short. I would never go long in these trades. I'd always be short in these trades. And then I would place my bet, if you like, and it was a bit like gambling at a casino. And that's part of the reason that I don't do it anymore, right? Because it's a fundamental trade based on market sentiment and based on a bit of a toss of a coin. There's not much chart analysis going on there or anything happening. But I was never doing it with a huge amount of money either. But in essence, it's kind of gambling. Is the price going to go up or is it going to go down? And all I was doing was following the market in the US, getting confirmation of that in New Zealand in the given sector that I would trade. And then I would find something, usually an index. The indexes were the ones that tracked the most. Sometimes a stock would do the same things as well, but usually an index would be the easiest thing to do. And probably 60 to 70% of the time I'd win. But if you listen to my language, yeah, I'd place my bet and I would win. It's no different to putting, $50 on number 9 in race 7 down at Rose Hill, right? You might as well be gambling like that.
I hate that analogy.
But that's what I was doing.
Okay.
And that's I recognized that I was doing that. And I never had a problem with it because I just didn't care, because I was never actually trading with money that if I lost it didn't matter. There was no downside. There was always more upside than downside. And if a trade didn't go my way by midday, I'd be like, oh, well, whatever, that one didn't work out, because I was at work, right? If you're sitting there all day on your computer and you're like day trading the bloody thing like that, you would send yourself crazy, right? Because you had a loss that day and it doesn't feel so great. But I had a lot of experience doing that, and I did that a lot, and I made quite a bit of money doing that as well. But eventually I realized, and this is like tantamount to playing the pokies or betting on the horses, so cut that out. And that's when I really started to understand charts and candlesticks and price action and all those movements and all the technical indicators and stuff. And I moved well away from fundamental trades and fundamental analysis and moved to more technical analysis, at which time it became quite easy. You point out all the time that I can teach you to trade in an hour, and it only really takes a very short amount of time to look at a chart to kind of understand what's going on. And you did it just then. You did it in less than an hour. You did it in like 5 minutes. You looked at different time frames and pulled them in, pulled them out, found some important resistance. And one of the things that worked really well for me was pivot points. So understanding the pivot points of the day and knowing if the price moves through that level, it's more likely to go that way than it is to go that way. So place your long trade here or your short trade there. And that always worked pretty well for me as like an indicator of the trade. So I would take the micro view, pan out to the macro view, then come to the pivot points and figure out actually what was going on based on price action and volume in the market and whatnot as well. And everybody's got their own kind of style and their technical style, but it's a fun skill to learn. And if you're, most men gravitate towards that. It's not, I don't know any female traders. I'm sure there's female traders out there, but the technical aspect of it and the detail that's required in there and all the things that come together, if you're a very left-brained person, that's something that you'll be drawn to. And I encourage people to learn how to do that, because it's a fun skill to have and it's a good skill to know as well.
Well, I would encourage people who to do it if they're looking for an academic exercise, if they enjoy the academic nature of it, and if they want to be intellectually stimulated. However, for most people, no, I'd say don't do it. Don't trade. You're better off, like I said, we talked before, just hire out someone like Daisy FX or Novatech FX. Have them, so that way you can get trading type returns without putting yourself through. Look, it's a sexy topic, right? Everybody likes the idea of trading, right? But no one, it's like everyone wants to be a millionaire, but they don't realize what it takes to become a millionaire. Are you willing to put in the pain? Are you willing to not go to your kid's birthday party on a Saturday because you have to go visit an important client? Are you really willing to do what it takes to be successful? And that's all. Everyone will say, "Oh, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes." Yeah. Not my experience. Not really. Most people are not willing to do what it takes.
I think I'm coming from the perspective of you should learn the skills, but not necessarily apply the skills. Because if you open up your, a lot of people would start in MT4 or MT5, and you're going over to a platform like that, or you're going to TradeStation, and inevitably you go to the app marketplaces, and there's all these bots in there, and this bot gets like a 89% win rate, and this bot gets this and this bot gets that, and you look at them in back testing and you download the trials and you go, wow, that's working incredibly well, that's good. these days you can take the code from TradeStation, which is dead simple to write. Even if you're not a coder, you can learn how to do that in an afternoon. It's pretty easy. But you could go to ChatGPT, give it the parameters of what your trading strategy actually is. It'll write the code for you, and you can tip it into TradeStation in about less than 10 minutes, and then backtest it across 30 years of history, and you go, oh my God, I've got a 93% win rate. And you go, oh wow, that's awesome. You turn it on, and then all of a sudden it just goes and crashes hard because
But just to be clear for the audience, Rob and I, that's not what we're here for. We're not here to teach you how to trade or to give you tips for several reasons. But a lot of it is we don't want the responsibility of you saying, I lost money on this because I did something you told me. We don't want to take, it's not worth it. So, I mean, we're happy to share little bits of wisdom along the way, but don't be sending us emails asking us for that chat GDP program you just talked about. Don't bother. Okay.
Well, that's part of the reason I share that story of gambling with you as well, right? Is because I want you to understand that that's the unspoken truth about this. If you don't know what you're doing, it's a flip of the coin. It's heads or tails. And, the house is set up to win. You're probably almost better off going to the casino, playing the roulette table. It's red or it's black. And then there's a double zero at the top and a zero at the bottom. There's 2 green zeros on there, which reduces your chances from 30% to something like 26%. So the chances of you coming up red or black are probably higher than you going to CMC markets and going short or long on a CFD. Just because if you don't know what you're doing, you're better off playing the odds of something rather than trying to be technical. The odds are more likely to come up for you.
Well, there's some important distinctions in terminology here that I think people should know about. There's a difference between investing and trading, and there's a difference between trading and speculating and gambling. Okay, trading. When you're trading, you are looking for something specific. You're trading because there's a reason to do that trade, whatever your reason happens to be. You put that trade on for a reason. It wasn't a guess. Now, if you guessed and you made money on it, and you tell your buddy, I made money on a trade yesterday. No, you didn't. You just got lucky. Okay,
that's me. I just got lucky. Hey, I guessed right, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, trading is a business. Now, people should treat it like a business. And just like with every business, there are things you need to learn, things you need to know. Just buying something in the morning, it's all in the afternoon, that's not trading. That's guessing. Okay. And so but people, conflate those terms all the time. That's why when I hear people, equate trading with gambling, it just rubs me the wrong way because it's the furthest thing from it. A gambler, he puts money on the roulette table on red or black. It's a random, he has no way of knowing it's just a guess, right?
Well, you're playing the odds, right? That's the difference between that. And you're so right when you say it's important to get your language and the distinction in the language right, because traders are not gamblers. There's something completely different to that. And hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you got something from that. You learned my lessons. Don't go out there doing red or blacks. If you want to go and play at the casino, go have some fun, do that. But never do it with money that you can't afford to lose. And if you're behind, don't think that you can double down on some Martindale principle and think that that's actually going to solve your problem. It doesn't. You got to be careful. One of the unspoken truths of trading, and this is something that we could delve into maybe at another juncture, if you like, Ed, is that money management is the number one thing that you have to understand as a trader. And what I learned about trading and the way to make money is you're never risking more than 1% of your account on any one particular trade. And the gains that you get off that 1% are whatever they are. But the reality is that 1% is never very much. So if you've got a $10,000 account, you're only ever putting $100 at risk at a time. So you really need a quite significant account to actually maintain your money management. Because if you have 5 or 6 losses in a row, it means that you're going to have 10 to 15 wins in a row to actually cover off the losses that you just had.
I have a very simple, and we'll wrap this up. I've got a very simple strategy that I taught in my class. It takes about 2.5 minutes to learn. Yep. It makes eminent sense. People get it immediately. And if you just follow those simple steps, you'll greatly increase your chances. You increase your chances of being a successful trader. I don't know. It's got to be like 90%. A massive, and at the same time, it reduces your risk just enormously. So I've got a very simple strategy that I teach people that keeps their losses small And let the winners run. Anyway, we'll save something for another day. Keep
I
people
love that.
coming
I'm
back.
like, where is it? What is it? What is it? Let's save that for another day.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Let's shift gears. There's another story that's been reported in the media about Jeffrey Epstein's diary and who on earth were meeting this person. Let me just share a screen with an article that you can find in about 3 seconds flat. And I've got some additional information that goes with that, right? So if you don't know, Epstein died in jail, but his diary came out and all of these people were meeting with him. So do you know who this dude is? He's the boss of the CIA. So let me just share, I'll summarize this article for you just in a couple of moments here. So Epstein's private calendar has been revealed, and he's been meeting with prominent figures, including the current CIA director, William Burns. And there's another fella from a place called Bard College, and he's the president of Bard College, and his name is Leon Botstein. Another person he met with was Obama's White House counsel, Catherine Rumela, and of course, Professor Noam Chomsky. You might have heard that in the media. So the thing is, he met with these people after his conviction for sex offenses. So it wasn't as if these people didn't know who he was or know that he was a sex offender. They were meeting with him afterwards, and the boss of the CIA saying that he didn't know it. So in his diary, the meetings were scheduled from 2013 and 2017, following his jail time in 2008, as I said. So the purpose of this meetings was not disclosed. According to the CIA, Burns had no relationship with Epstein and was unaware of his background when they met. And imagine the boss of the CIA not knowing who he's meeting. What a load of garbage. I don't buy it for a second. Don't be drawn into the mainstream media narrative that will tell you, oh, well, I don't know. They just deny. It just doesn't make any sense. Rumela, so the Obama White House counsel, who had dozens of meetings with Epstein, never accepted any invitations to fly with him, according to a Goldman Sachs spokesperson. Like, what is going on here? It's just boggling my mind. Bonstein, so the boss of that university, acknowledged Epstein's past, but he continued to meet with him due to the Bard's College policy that they had a belief in rehabilitation. And Noam Chomsky disclosed that his meetings with Epstein revolved around political and academic topics, including Israeli-Palestinian relations. So the meetings between Chomsky and Epstein also involved former Israeli Prime Minister Edmund Barak. Now, I don't know about you folks, but that seems to me like something really fishy going on there. And what's the reason that they're hiding all of this? What's the reason that none of this has been disclosed? Like, this is like the biggest story of the last 20 years, that Jeffrey Epstein was a CIA asset going around trafficking children, bringing in people to have sexual relationships with these children, putting them on camera and using that as blackmail and leverage. Like, what? Why isn't this being reported in the mainstream media? It's the same reason that the Hunter Biden laptop is not being reported in the mainstream media, and only just recently it's all coming out. It's all coming out that Anthony Blinken was the person who was responsible for the cover-up of the Hunter Biden laptop, and he did that because he wanted to be the Secretary of State. So you can see how these things work. Hey, Anthony, if you make this go away, I'll make you the Secretary of State. Goes away and gets 51 of his mates to sign a document to say that that's Russian disinformation. Next thing you know, he's the Secretary of State. And it's all coming out. And so they try and keep themselves at arm's length from it, where Anthony Blinken's wife is now involved in it, communicating with Hunter Biden. And Anthony Blinken apparently didn't have any interactions with Hunter Biden at all, but we now have the emails to prove that he did. So he lied. And so what of this Epstein stuff? Is that all interrelated to all of these things going on here as well? The deep state want you to believe one thing, the media want you to read another thing, and the narrative is all convoluted because it's all coming apart. And you listen to these things and you go, I don't buy for a second that the CIA guy doesn't know who he's meeting. I know whenever I go to a meeting somewhere in the city or somewhere to meet a new client, I Google the person, I look on LinkedIn, try and find them on Facebook, on Instagram to see who they are. And it's not because I'm stalking them. It's because I'm trying to get some background on them to anticipate what potentially might be coming up. often I get invited to meetings and I get given proposals. People say to me, hey, Rob, we want you to come and do this. And in order to do this, we'll give you that. I'm like, who are these people? Can I believe them? Can I trust them? I need to do my research and my homework on these people. And imagine the CIA director going to meet someone as if he doesn't have a team of people that do all of that. Especially, how would you even get a meeting with the director of the CIA, for heaven's sake? I definitely couldn't get a meeting with the boss of ASIS or ASIO here in Australia. I know who that person is, and I could go through their office and I could say, hey, can I get on your Calendly for a Zoom meeting at 2:00 on a Wednesday? It'd be like, no, who are you? And I've got some information I want to report to you. Okay, who are you? And then they'll go away in the background and figure out actually who I am to see if it's credible or not. None of this stuff in mainstream media is credible. So when we get some information like this about his diary, and we've got actual information, actual facts here, it's just tantalizing and teasing us a little bit more of the story of the last 20 years. It's unbelievable. What do you think, Ed? Do you get drawn into all of this stuff, or do you kind of are you over it all?
Dear diary. Today,
that's exactly what it is.
Today I had a meeting with the director of the CIA.
What about the judge? The judge in his case, the judge says, no, none of this information is going to be let out because it's too sensitive. It's like, well, isn't that the point of like going through the court system so everything is on public record? Otherwise, you might as well take the guy out the back line, put him up against the wall and shoot him, which incidentally is what they did. They put him in a jail cell and they hung him. And
there you go.
Unbelievable.
Look, I think that's one of the reasons why that other Epstein from FTX, they didn't want him in front of Congress testifying because he knew people and he knew stuff. So that's why it took him so long to put him under arrest, put him under subpoena, because the court for the Southern District of New York, the last thing they wanted is this guy in open court testifying because of the things that he would expose. Same thing, I'm sure with Epstein. I don't buy the idea that he hung himself with. Look, this is so obvious, so bad. It's like a really bad written movie. You couldn't make this stuff up. Yeah, they happened to turn the camera off in his cell for the exact 5 minutes when he died. And
you know what it reminds me of, right? Like sometimes I'll watch a movie with my missus who's worked for government for like 23 since the year 2000. So 23 years she's worked for government and had some great jobs working with some incredible people. So, she's part of the deep state of New South Wales, if you like. And the way that I describe it, right, is, I've said it to you before, it's the paradox of leadership, right? So she's lived through all of these different governments that, Labor, Liberal, all of these idiot leaders, that have been, there hasn't been a leader here in New South Wales that hasn't been thrown out for corruption. The one that's there now has been elected there, and it's just a matter of time before something corrupt comes out. He goes in front of ICAC, resigns, falls on his own sword, and then goes and gets a $500,000 a year job for some bank like the last premiers actually have. So New South Wales is the most corrupt state in Australia. It's unbelievable. All the New South Wales premiers have been tossed out because of corruption, and they've quit because of that. But the paradox of leadership, right, is that we're led and governed by these fake leaders who are corrupt, liars, and cheaters. But the people, the bureaucracy that run this great state that we live in, create this incredible infrastructure. And they're the people really running it. The leaders are just the mouthpiece, the idiot mouthpieces of the bureaucracy that's there. But the bureaucracy works incredibly well because people just go to work and it's just their job. Oh, that's my job. You want me to get that done? I'll fix that policy for schools. I'll get it done. And often I'll watch a TV show or a TV series and there's something to do with like police or government or something to do with government. And me and Susie call it Greyland. Because every government office and every government place that you go to here in Australia has some element of grey, like my jacket on my hoodie that I'm wearing. The carpet is grey, the furniture is grey, the people are grey, the environment is grey. We call it Greyland. And on TV shows, the people that write these shows don't understand that's not how government is. Government is not this well-oiled machine where people are actually coming together and working together and doing these really great things and they solve these crimes and they make all these things happen. Like the Hollywood version of Greyland that you see whether that's in America, in the UK, in Australia, or some other country in the world, all government grey land is the same wherever you are. The bureaucracy is the same. And it's funny because you look at it from a Hollywood perspective and you say, you couldn't write an Epstein movie like that. But actually, the real life Epstein version of it is the real life version of it. Hollywood doesn't depict real life greyland very well, because in real life, as we've seen with Epstein, the whole thing is a giant cover up, and everybody is covering their own ass because everybody knows that they've done something illegal, and they know that if they get caught, they're going to be seen to be not at arm's length from this predator and this perpetrator of these crimes, and they're going to get caught out. And he recorded everything. He recorded everything. And the Prince Andrew thing went away. And all of these other things have magically just evaporated, been redacted, or gone away. And it's just not real.
I'll bet that if he had made it clear to everyone that he had that diary, he'd probably still be alive.
I reckon he was sitting there just saying, "No, well, you can lock me up all day long if you want to be out."
I've got people. I'm sure he was convinced he has his friends would come to the rescue.
He's so arrogant.
Yeah. Well, so Susie keep a diary?
Yeah, deep state. Deep state. Early in her career, she worked for the Premier's department. So the Premier of New South Wales is obviously the key person, right? The leader of the government of the day. And she worked in the Premier's office, but it was a really great place to work. At the time, Bob Carr was the Premier, and he'd just been elected. And Bob Carr was sick of all the negative press about government. And one of her jobs was to pull out all the really good things government did and help with the PR with all of the really good things. And if you ever ask her about it and say, what are some of the good things? There's a big giant laundry list. There's like hundreds of really great things that government does in a day-to-day basis. But government doesn't do that, right? The people that work in government do that. The government takes the credit for all the good things that they actually do. But they set the policy and the framework and the conditions for those things to actually happen. Our societies as a whole, I think, function pretty well. And that's because people, as a rule of thumb, are pretty good. People want what's good and what's right for people like that. But, when you look at something like Epstein, you got to question all of that, and you got to question the motives of the people that are actually in charge and what's really going on behind it. I don't know about you, but it's a juicy story, and it's worth kind of staying ahead of, and because you just never know where it's going to go. It's like the Panama Files or the Pentagon Papers, all those sorts of things. Epstein's deeply involved in all of that stuff.
Oh, it's one of those things where the truth is going to come out, and now we're starting to see it. Right, the truth always eventually comes out.
Indeed, it does, my friend.
It could be it could be decades later. But the truth always finds its way out.
Absolutely. All right, let's segue to the last part of today's show. There's some crazy things going on in the deep state where you are there in Minnesota. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Ed? Have you got something you want to share with us, mate?
Okay, so Rob and I are going to veer into some new territory for us. And I asked Rob, well, is this something you think we should cover? And he was, oh yeah, absolutely. He was sure that. So we're going to get into it's kind of a social topic here, a societal topic, and it might be a little bit controversial. But look, we're all about the untold truth here, right? So, and we're going to talk about a topic here that's a little bit sensitive, but an important. I think it's an extremely important one. And what brought this topic up was my own home state of Minnesota hit the news in a very embarrassing way. Embarrassing to me anyway, and in a disgusting, disgraceful way. So let me do a little presentation for you. Now, as I was prepping for this segment, I'd actually come up with like about 2 hours worth of clips, and it was all really good material. And I thought, I got to boil it down. So I did come up with just one or two clips. They are about 4 minutes long, so it's not very long, but they do kind of encapsulate the entire topic in one segment, and then we'll throw it to discussion with Rob. So, and the article, the clips are pretty self-explanatory, so I won't bother explaining it. I'll just play the clip.
Well, the state of Minnesota may soon become a safe haven for child predators. if Representative Lee Fink passes Bill HF 1655. Here's Lee Fink. This is Minnesota representative, a transgender person who was elected last year after running on a platform of legalizing medical transition for minors. Fink, interestingly enough, is very interested in minors. In fact, Fink wrote this book for children called Queerfully and Wonderfully Made, a guide for LGBTQ plus Christian teens.
Wow.
In this book, Fink has advice for young people such as this: trans and non-binary and queer and gay and lesbian and bi young people, don't listen to your parents. That's the sage advice from this Christian trans
So don't listen to your parents
person.
at all. Yeah.
That's the quote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Now, Fink is a parent, though, who calls themselves a single mom of 2 elementary school daughters, even though Fink did not transition until 2017, so presumably was the girl's father for at least some part of their lives, but still now is billed as a single mother. Fink was also named as one of USA Today's Women of the Year, alongside Michelle Obama and Goldie Hawn and NASA astronaut Nicole Mann.
I mean, other biological women.
Is Lee Fink making positive impacts on the community that they serve in Minnesota? Well, earlier in this week, Fink successfully passed the Trans Refuge Bill. That's HF 146. It allows minors from other states to come to Minnesota to receive gender-affirming care, meaning surgery and pharmaceuticals, and it prevents other states and parents from outside of Minnesota to get their children back. Here is the headline of the bill. It says it prevents the use of subpoenas to gather information for out-of-state laws interfering with the use of gender-affirming health care. It prevents, child custody and child welfare provisions from out of state. You can't use warrants, arrests, or extradition to other states. So once a child hits Minnesota state land, they cannot be removed if they are now on any kind of cross-sex medicalization.
So let's just play this out. Let's role play this a second, okay? Let's say we live in Pennsylvania, okay? And our 12-year-old son is going through some mental issues, and decides that, in the dark of night, has been on TikTok and has been seeing some stuff about going to Minnesota would be a safe haven, and he's going to go there and get drugs and hormone
and get his balls
puberty
removed.
Yeah.
He
his
can
testicles.
do that now.
And we can't do anything about it as parents.
No, you can't get him back. You can't subpoena anybody. You can't
hell is
extradite him.
happening?
No, absolutely you can't.
What the hell is happening?
That was introduced just a few months ago and passed and became law April 24th.
So Minnesota, let's just be clear.
Minnesota is now a sanctuary state like California. So if you're going to put this poll up and say, should Minnesota be its own country and maybe not be a part of the United States, you're going to have to toss out California too, because I think California and I think Oregon also is a sanctuary state.
So Minnesota legislature, they got together, all of the people in the legislature, like, yeah, that sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, let's screw every other parent in every other state from making choices.
It's not even the Romans' fault.
Yeah, nobody's fault. Not even the Romans. Yeah,
I kind of think they just had the camera rolling and they were just ad-libbing the actors there in the Monty Python skit. It is just like, and John Cleese in the Cleese in the middle there going, "You want to do what?"
They should show that clip in every kindergarten out there, and all the way through grade school, and that's the only video they have to show about this whole topic. Just watch that.
Look, people are, in my view, people are free to live their lives however they want to live their lives.
And I meant to lead with that point. And let's be clear. I'm a libertarian. You should feel free to live your life however you see fit. But the dividing line is when you start encroaching on other people's rights to raise their family the way they want. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, there's all sorts of different areas of this subject that we could cover, and I had a lot of good ones. I had a couple of videos of this man trying to breastfeed his baby, and And he was sincerely trying to breastfeed the baby. He was a male, but he identifies as the baby's mother. He's trying to. So things get really weird really fast. On this topic, but the main point I wanted to cover here was Minnesota's law giving sanctuary to people who wanted to transition their youth, their kids, because there are states right now passing laws against doing gender transformation surgeries on children. There are states that are doing that, and good for them. They're protecting the children. But there are states like Minnesota and California, who did it before us, say, listen, as long as your feet hit our soil, no other state can take it back. And there is a case in Texas, we were talking about this the other day, about a man who had twin sons with his wife, and they got divorced because his wife wanted to transition one of the boys into a girl because he had showed signs of femininity, and she said he really should be a girl. He said, I'm not going to let you do that to my son. So they got divorced. He managed to get custody of one of the boys, but the other boy she got custody of. And every time that son would visit him, he never presented as a girl. He acted like a regular boy. But when he's with his mother, apparently he presented signs of being a girl. So what does the woman do? She picks up and moves to California with that son. So that father now, there's no way for him to protect that one son who was taken to California. They can do all sorts of things to that boy without the father being able to do anything. To me, this is evil. It's disgusting. It's embarrassing to me as a Minnesotan that this would pass. And Minnesota is a very liberal state. But now we're veering into a whole different area here in our society where it's fascist, it's authoritarian. How dare you, once a law is passed, how dare you, if you argue with a person, you're automatically a bigot or a homophobe or a transphobe. These are the words they come up with to shut down debate. And if you disagree in any way from these new social norms, you are ostracized. You are shouted down. Anyway, so this is an important topic because this is the way our society is veering toward these extreme, radical, weird moves. These movements, look, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, this wasn't an issue. This is being forced down our throats by a small number of activists who want to promote an agenda. Anyway, it riles me up. It makes me angry. And please, if you disagree with us or with me, please let us know in the comment section below. We'll respect your opinion. Rob, so what do you think?
Yeah, man, it's good to get your perspective on it. These are important societal issues. When I look at, I'm just going to draw it back to what we're doing all day long here on YouTube. When I look at my YouTube feed, what I see is the algorithm serves me up what I'm interested in. So I've watched a video about X. So YouTube algorithm says, Rob likes X. Let me show him something X plus 1. And it kind of shows me something on the periphery. It knows like hundreds of data points about me. It knows all the thousands of videos that I've watched, how long I've watched them for. And if you like that, you're probably going to watch this as well. And sometimes in YouTube, every couple of weeks, I see it, there's a row on desktop, that is, I'm talking about. There's a row across it and it says, looking for something different than what you're normally looking for. Click, and you click there, and then I go, it's not really that much different. It's maybe 10% different, but it's very similar. So what they're doing is they're showing me the same stuff, but from different people. So, YouTube, the algorithm's trying to widen my aperture to help them serve me more. And the reason for that is because YouTube want me to have a great experience. Because if I have a great experience in YouTube and they show me things that I like all the time, I'm going to keep coming back. And the more I keep coming back, the more ad revenue I get. Now, if I just kind of cross over into my mobile phone, and when I look at my phone, I watch a video and I see a recommendation. And then if I look at the homepage, I see the shorts. And if I look at the shorts on there, all of the shorts are completely disconnected from the desktop. And the desktop or the laptop or the iPad version of what I see on my YouTube feed is usually the same. They correlate. But when I look at my YouTube shorts, it doesn't correlate to what I've been looking at. And what I see in YouTube shorts is the topic we're discussing. Everything to do with transgender, everything to do with division of society, all of these leftist ideologies and agendas. And I really believe it's a systematic destruction of our society. It's a systematic destruction of the nuclear family and the destruction of Christian conservative values, which has been the foundation of Western society that's underpinned everything that we've done to get us to where we are today. And the left are systematically destroying that because they believe in a socialist society, religion doesn't play a part. You know, the state is more important. In communist China, there is no religion. The Falun Gong group have been ousted from China. And I saw an ad the other day that's coming to Australia. You know, those dancers, I don't think it's Falun Gong, that's the religious group. There's another group of Chinese dancers, you know, it's like 5,000 years of Chinese dance history. And they're running around waving these things and all these women doing these incredible tricks and stuff like that. And I'm like, that actually looks really good. I reckon that'd be great to go and see. And then you look and you go, that's real Chinese culture right there. That's the real Chinese culture. That's it right there. So why would the Chinese Communist Party suppress that culture? Well, it's based around religion. And it's based around religion and it's based around family values. But in a socialist society, in a communist socialist society, family values and religion come second to the state. The state is more important. And that's what you're seeing in the United States. That's what I'm seeing in my YouTube feed on my phone and YouTube shorts, is the systematic destruction of society and the systematic destruction of the family values, the nuclear family and Christian values that have underpinned everything that's going on. And all you have to do is look to the model of China to see actually where it ends up. That's where it ends up. And at no point in this experiment of human history has communism ever worked. No. Socialism doesn't work. Communism doesn't work. And every time it happens, millions of people die. And that's what's happening right now as well. They put people in concentration camps because they have a religion in China. And here in the Western societies that we live in, you now have a version, the way I describe it, here, I'll go out on a limb for you, and I'll say the unspoken truth, and I'll pull back the curtain behind what's going on in my brain box. I've seen in human society, and I'm a student of history, and I've studied history a lot. We've had slavery throughout history a lot. Yeah, humans have enslaved each other a lot. And when you look at, you know, I'm a student mostly of military history, and if you look at the way that Genghis Khan ran riot across Central Asia and that part of the world and how they conquered and what they did to conquer and how that all happened is unbelievable. But if you go back a little bit further in history, you'll see that part of the human experience is human sacrifice. They sacrifice to the gods. And I believe that the people in this transgender movement are sacrificing their children. It's a version of human sacrifice. Even Natalie said it on Redacted there in the little clip that you played. What, they can come over here and have their balls cut off? That's a version of human sacrifice. You're sacrificing your child to the gods of liberalism and the gods of leftism and the gods of communism. And people don't realize that the doctors holding those scalpels are the people that were sacrificing them like they were on the Inca pyramids. The Inca pyramids that go up like this and they have the channels down the side of the actual stairs where they run up. They would sacrifice hundreds of people every couple of moons. They would sacrifice them and the blood would run down the bottom of those stairs. If you ever go to those places, they're the most chilling, awful. I see that stuff and I was like, ugh. I remember there was an exhibition that came to Sydney. It was about all ancient South American artifacts and archaeology and all of those things. And it was at the Museum of Sydney here. And I didn't really pay that much attention to what it was. And my daughter at the time, I think she was about 8 or 9 or something like that, at that curious primary school, elementary school age. She loved all of those sorts of things. She loved learning about history. And I thought, we'll go and see that. But I didn't realize what it was. And honestly, I walked in there and I was in there for about 3 minutes and I walked right out because it was all about human sacrifice. And it was all about the artifacts of that. And she's kind of walking around with me and, Daddy, what's this? What's this? What's this? And I was like, yeah, this is not what I thought. This is not for little kids. And I remember walking out of there just going, oh, and just like, there's like one of the biggest parenting fails I've ever had, or probably the biggest parenting fail I've ever had. Luckily, she didn't realize what it was. And luckily, she didn't realize what it was all about. But 90% of that exhibition was about human sacrifice and what they did to each other. And that's what we're doing today. That's what they're doing to kids. And that's what I'm saying. You're going out on a limb saying that. That's
no,
what it is.
You're not going on a limb. the evidence is everywhere. The evidence is in our face. A lot of the clips that I had were out of Sweden. Now, Sweden has gone, boy, Sweden, guys, you got to break in my heart. They've gone off the charts woke with this whole business about gender, equality and identity. In their kindergarten, they're not allowed to have any kind of gender specific anything. Everything is gender neutral. Boys are not allowed to refer themselves as boys. They're not allowed to play with boy toys. Same thing with the girls. Everything has to be. And in that segment, they talk to these parents who go out of their way to raise their children non-binary, where they don't identify as either sex. They go out of their way to squash any kind of normal impulses kids would have to be their gender. They go out of their way, and society is accepting this, and they're promoting it, and they're supporting this. And if so, it is child abuse, in my opinion. In fact, this is child abuse. If you let children be natural, they will naturally gravitate. Boys will want to play war at recess. Girls will want to play with their dolls. It's a stereotype, but it's a stereotype for a reason.
But it's not a stereotype. I never really noticed any of that stuff with my sons, and I never noticed that they played with cars or trucks or anything. I just didn't notice. But when my daughter came along, I was a bit older, right? And I realized, like, I'd had the experience with two boys. But when my daughter came along, she was, the way I describe it is, she was defaulted to play with little baby toys, and she had little babies, and little girls love to run around playing babies. And I remember, if you go onto eBay and all these, secondhand places that you can buy stuff, Facebook Marketplace and all that, you can buy all the toys that parents don't want anymore, and they give them away for a couple of bucks, right? And I can remember buying these babies because she loved to play babies and put them in cots and change their nappies and do all these things. And I never taught her to do any of that stuff. And I don't know, maybe she saw that at daycare or whatever. But I remember saying, what could be more fun than having more babies? And I remember coming home with a bag full of babies once and line them up in the cots and playing with them. And she was just defaulted to play with all of these really girly things and to do I would have leftover toys from my sons as well, trucks and airplanes and all of those sorts of things. And she never really was interested in playing with any of that. Her defaulted status was to play with things that stereotypically girls would play with. And she was very social. She's a very social creature, not really interested in sport, but interested in playing games with other girls. And if you think that, somebody is not defaulted to be a certain way, you're wrong. You never really studied your child or looked at your child as effectively. And I'm guilty of that because I never noticed any of that in my boys. Now, I'm laughing when you're describing what's happening in Sweden and those reports you see. And the reason that I'm laughing is because these people are living in a fantasy. It's a fantasy world that they live in. And that's okay. You're entitled to live the way that you want to live.
No, it's not. It's not okay when you're programming your children. You're
correct, that's what I'm saying. Is it's okay for you to do that. It's okay for you to live in that world and to have that belief system and to feel that way about those things. But the minute you start overlaying that onto somebody else, that becomes a problem, because that, particularly when you're overlaying it on people where they don't have a choice. And that's what you're saying. The laws that they're passing there in Minnesota is being overlaid onto people that now don't have a choice. And that's the failing of our system, right? That's the failing of democracy that we have, is that the people that are in power fail to recognize and govern for the people that didn't vote for them. That's the fundamental flaw of democracy and the election-based systems that we actually have, because those people passing those laws, and Clayton sitting in there in that redacted thing, just going, they all got together in a room and said, this is a good idea. But it's a good idea for who? It's a good idea for like 0.00001% of the population. Well, what about the other 99.999% of the population that don't want this or it doesn't affect? Like, why are we even having this conversation? Doesn't make any sense.
The parents, with laws like this, the parents have no more rights. They're taking your children away from you. You don't have any more rights. Your child belongs to the state. Your child, so let me ask you, Rob. So let's say you had another daughter. Let's not pick on poor Danielle. Let's say you had another daughter, and she's 12 years old, and she watches a TikTok. We use Clayton's scenario, and Perth passes this law, and your little Angelica, we'll call it Angelica. She sees it on TikTok, and some influencer tells her about it, and somehow convinces her it's
a good idea.
So she hops on a train. She's just old enough to get on a train and make her way to Perth. And once she gets to Perth, there's nothing you can do to stop her from being transitioned into a boy. Even though she never presented as a boy before, but she just saw this TikTok influencer and thought it'd be cool. Well, now there's nothing you can do to get your daughter back. There's nothing you do to stop the transition. So what would Rob Rust do?
Yeah, but there's plenty that you can do, because, what you're talking about is the enforcement of laws, precedents, all of those sorts of things. I would just simply get on a plane, pick her up and bring her back. And, she's a minor, she's in my custody, she's in my control.
No, not according to this law.
That's the tricky part, right? But that's what I'm saying is, if there's no precedent that's been set in Minnesota, there might be precedent in Oregon or in California, like Natalie was mentioning. But if there's no precedent there in Minnesota, then that's something quite different and quite tricky to actually navigate. But I think what they would do is look to those other states for the precedent.
Something tells me that the guy who gets between you and your daughter, anywhere along the way, that guy's taking his life into his hands.
I think the same is true of every parent, right?
Yeah.
You're going to end up in a ditch over there, and I'll do whatever I need to do to protect my kid. But I think that would be a complete and total fundamental failing of my parenting if that actually came to pass. And the reason that I say that is because I just wouldn't allow that to get so far ahead of itself. I got a great relationship with my daughter, with my kids, with my partner, to make sure that we're all on the same page about these contentious issues. And I'm talking to my kids and my family about these issues to make sure that something like that could never happen. And if I like to believe that I set the frame and set the culture within the family, that if the kid was going to have a communication piece about that and wanted to talk about that, then they could come to me and talk about that before they took their life into their own hands, so to speak. So it's also a failing of the parents, not just social media or society and whatnot as well. You need to be in there with your kids and not just sending them onto their iPad in the corner because you couldn't be bothered with them. So it's an interesting topic. I'm looking forward to having more of these conversations. Ed, if people want to connect with Ed and share their opinion with him, you can check him out on his YouTube channel at HeyEd7496. There's a lot of Hey Eds out there, and that's the number we got on there. So make sure you reach out and connect with Ed and go and check him out on his YouTube channel. He's got a lot of good trading stuff over there, and we talk about Daisy 7K metals and a couple of other things as well. So please hop on over and check that out. And all of the links that we've talked about today will be in the show notes below. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or on your podcasting app, you'll be able to just pop open the show notes there and you can connect with us as well. Also, don't forget to come on over and follow us on Telegram and on Twitter as well. And once again, all the links are there. Ed, have you got any closing comments as we close out today's show? We went for a little bit longer than we normally do, but it was a great conversation and we got some great unspoken truths out the door there. I think it was really good. I really enjoyed the interaction as always. You got any closing remarks, mate?
Not really. I kind of lost track of time as I always do. So I was kind of surprised we went over. But just please remember to hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We're still a little shy of our 1 million people.
Let's keep that going, and we'll see you tomorrow, Ed. Bye for now, mate.
All right. Good night, Bob.